Fernando Mendoza hasn't even fully settled into the Raiders locker room, and there are already reports of serious tension behind the scenes. From resurfaced controversies to criticism from veterans, to some players reportedly questioning whether he's ready to lead the franchise, things in Las Vegas are getting messy fast. Let me catch you up. The arrival of Fernando Mendoza. Since December, Fernando Mendoza has won a Heisman Trophy, led Indiana to a 16-0 national championship season, and was the NFL's #1 draft pick, courtesy of the Raiders. That is a resume that would make any franchise drool. Mendoza skyrocketed to the top of every NFL pundit's draft board during the 2025 college football season, as the Indiana Hoosiers standout won the Heisman Trophy and led the school to a national championship. And the Raiders didn't hesitate. How Raiders landed on franchise QB Fernando Mendoza, 2026 NFL draft. Raiders general manager John Spytek said last month he nixed any talk of trading the #1 pick because he was sure Mendoza would be their guy. There was no debate in the war room. In the final meeting where Mendoza was discussed as a prospect, there was a matter-of-factness to the conversation that indicated what seemed like a slam dunk to the general public as far back as January had become an actual slam dunk for the team making the pick. But here's where it gets interesting. This is a franchise coming off back-to-back historically dismal seasons. A 3-14 season in 2025 after a 4-13 season in 2024 made it clear a gut was in order. Interviews with 22 people in and around the team and the league pointed to continued dysfunction symptomatic of an impatient owner, a misaligned front office and coaching staff, and players who lost respect for their coaches. It marked the 4th straight losing season, the 21st time in 23 seasons they missed the playoffs, and the 3rd consecutive year the Raiders fired their head coach. This is the environment Fernando Mendoza walked into. A franchise that had fired Pete Carroll after one season. A locker room that multiple reports described as broken. https://justblogbaby.com's The Vibe Around this version of the Raiders feels broken beyond repair. The Raiders had seemingly reached a level of dysfunction previously untapped, as 2 coordinators had already been fired during the 2025 season. The shutout at Philadelphia represented a new low and a public indictment of a coaching staff that appeared to have lost the locker room. And into this mess walks a 21-year-old kid from Miami who just ran the table in college football. The #1 overall pick. The face of a franchise that hasn't won a playoff game since January 2003. Now Mendoza himself added fuel to this fire with something he said during his very first week in Las Vegas. In an interview with the Raiders' official team website, Mendoza made an admission that turned heads. The #1 pick in the 2026 NFL draft has the Mr. Nice Guy reputation, but according to the former Indiana Hoosiers star, that narrative isn't absolute. He said, "Although I've come off as very humble and pretty fuzzy and warm at the end of my Indiana career, when you have that equity, you're able to be like 4 Brett Favre and 12 Aaron Rodgers. If you ask my teammates, I wasn't always a nice guy. I was an a-hole sometimes because I wanted everyone to do their 1/11th, everyone to do their job, hold everyone to a high standard." That quote set the internet on fire. A rookie, not yet having thrown a single NFL pass, comparing his leadership style to Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, 2 of the most demanding, polarizing quarterbacks in football history, and then openly admitting he was difficult to play with. The question became obvious. How would Raiders veterans coming off the worst period in franchise history react to a 21-year-old who just told the world he plans to hold everyone accountable? The relatability question. This brings us to what former NFL linebacker Emmanuel Acho said on his show, and his comments hit a nerve across the football world. Former NFL linebacker Emmanuel Acho believes the rookie signal caller could struggle to relate to his team. He discussed it during a segment of his Speakeasy show. "My only fear is this, and I'm going to have an uncomfortable conversation. Quarterbacks need to be relatable," Acho said. "They just do. The best quarterbacks on the best teams, the Tom Bradys, the Patrick Mahomeses, the Josh Allens, they kick it with the brothers. They kick it with the country boys. They kick it with the hood cats. They kick it with whoever, even if they're white." That is a loaded observation, and Acho did not stop there. He used a former Raiders quarterback as a measuring stick. https://www.brofootballnetwork.com/Fernando Mendoza Red Flag Raiders. Acho added, "I don't know the last time the Raiders had a relatable quarterback." He pointed out how Geno Smith notably got punched in the jaw back when he was with the Jets, and how Derek Carr is now preaching in his free time. Like Carr, Mendoza is devoutly religious and expresses elements of that during just about every post-game interview. While the Raiders made the playoffs twice during Carr's tenure and failed to win a playoff game, he still maintained a strong connection with the players in the locker room. The implication here was stark and uncomfortable. Acho was essentially saying that a quarterback's ability to bond with his teammates across cultural lines, across different backgrounds and lifestyles, is just as important as his ability to throw a perfect spiral. And he was raising the deeply provocative question of whether Mendoza, a devoutly religious kid from a Cuban-American family in Miami, could bridge that gap in a locker room full of grown men from vastly different walks of life. In essence, Acho does not seem sure that Mendoza can reach his teammates on a personal level as his contemporaries can. That could come from how some perceive the former Indiana star. This was not a random hot take from a talking head chasing clicks. Acho played in the NFL. He understands locker room dynamics. He has lived through the tension that erupts when a quarterback cannot connect with his teammates on a human level beyond the X's and O's. And his words landed with a particular weight because of the franchise Mendoza was joining. A franchise that had just endured the most dysfunctional locker room environment in recent memory. https://www.yesi.com. ZenFL new report to details Raiders dysfunction lost 2025 season. Consider what these Raiders players lived through in 2025. The all-too-familiar Raiders' turmoil and failure continued. A 3-14 record and 9 losses by double digits, with 5 of those coming against teams with a below-500 record. Geno Smith was sacked 55 times, tied for most in the league. The Raiders averaged 74.9 rushing yards, the fewest in a season in the past 25 years, and ranked last in the league in nearly every rushing metric. These are professionals who endured an entire season of humiliation. They watched 2 coordinators get fired mid-season. They watched their head coach get fired after 1 year. Now, a 21-year-old is walking through the door carrying a Heisman Trophy and telling reporters he used to be difficult with his college teammates. It is perfectly understandable why someone like Acho would raise the question of whether that dynamic could become combustible. But the relatability concern was only the tip of the iceberg. Because as Mendoza settled into his first days in Las Vegas, criticism started flying in from another direction entirely. The anonymous attack. An anonymous ACC college coach went on the record with ESPN, hiding behind anonymity, and launched a broadside against the Raiders' prized new quarterback. One college coach that faced Mendoza in the ACC when he played at Cal doesn't think he has what it takes to be an NFL quarterback. He's a good decision maker, but I don't think he's got the NFL traits, the coach said. They're all back shoulder throws. That's not working in the NFL. That quote ricocheted across every football media platform within hours. The #1 overall pick, the Heisman Trophy winner, the guy who just led a team to a 16-0 season and a national championship, and a coach is saying he doesn't have NFL traits, that his signature throws will get picked off at the professional level. Raider Nation had its ire up again as the anonymous ACC coach told ESPN that Fernando Mendoza doesn't have the NFL traits. His receivers made him look better than he is. The back shoulder stuff won't work in the league. Now, this was not the first time Mendoza had faced skepticism. Before the draft, there was the Dan Orlovsky controversy. https://justblogbaby.com/college coaches are coming out of the woodwork on Raiders, Fernando Mendoza. During the draft process, some were skeptical of Fernando Mendoza and his ability to translate what he did at Indiana in 2025 to the next level. The Don Orlovsky criticism and critique was perhaps the most publicized such example. And before that, LaShawn McCoy had questioned whether Mendoza passed the eye test. On a recent edition of Speakeasy, McCoy did not believe Mendoza passes the eye test as a future #1 overall selection in the NFL draft. But this anonymous coach's comments felt particularly insidious because they arrived after Mendoza had already been drafted, after he had already walked into the Raiders building, after he had already started bonding with teammates. If any of those veterans read the quote, and they all did, the seed of doubt had been planted. If a coach who saw Mendoza up close thinks his game won't translate, what does that mean for the guys who are going to be blocking for him, catching passes from him, putting their bodies on the line for his throws? In the ESPN report, only one coach took shots at Mendoza. One coach, a coach who last saw Mendoza at Cal in 2024 before the Cignetti year and his incredible run to the college football national championship. This coach saw him before 41 touchdowns and 6 interceptions in 2025. He saw him before he became the runaway winner of the Heisman Trophy. And that detail is extraordinarily important. Sure, Mendoza didn't have a dominant year when Cal was in the ACC, but he grew a lot between his second-to-last and final college seasons. This anonymous coach was basing his entire critique on a version of Mendoza that no longer exists, like judging a butterfly by the caterpillar it used to be. But it gets even more suspicious. Miami famously lost to Indiana in the finale as they got taken down by Mendoza, a local Miami kid that they snubbed at every turn. Some speculated the anonymous coach was on the staff at Miami, the very team Mendoza beat in the national championship game. If true, the grudge would explain the timing, the anonymity, and the venom. Meanwhile, the Raiders' locker room was absorbing all of this noise. The media was circling, the narratives were being constructed, and every single Raider was being asked whether they believed in their new quarterback. The Kirk Cousins factor. Now layer on top of all of this the quarterback competition that the Raiders intentionally created. Unlike in Atlanta, when he felt misled by the Falcons after they drafted quarterback Michael Penix Jr. In 2024, despite signing him to a long-term deal, Cousins joined the Raiders knowing that they are expected to draft Fernando Mendoza with the first overall pick, and being a starter isn't guaranteed. Cousins fully embraces this reality and explained to head coach Kirk Cousins that the best player needs to play. "If that's not me, I don't want to be out there," Cousins said. "I don't think that's the best thing for the team." That sounds like a textbook mentor willing to step aside, right? But this is the NFL. Kirk Cousins has made over $300 million in his career. He was released by the Atlanta Falcons after one of the most embarrassing quarterback situations in recent NFL history. He came to Las Vegas with something to prove, and Cousins will be paid $20 million in guaranteed money in 2026. It will mark the 11th consecutive season that Cousins' contract will be fully guaranteed. The deal also includes a club option for 2 years at $80 million and could be worth up to $172 million over 5 years. That is not mentor money. That is starter money. And every veteran in that locker room can read a contract. One analyst said, "I think Kirk's going to have to fumble that opportunity away. Mendoza is not going to beat out Kirk Cousins right now. Kirk is still a veteran quarterback. And if you look at the money they paid him, he's going to play quarterback. You don't pay a guy that much just to teach a young buck how to throw the ball." Mendoza isn't expected to start week 1 for the Raiders. Las Vegas signed veteran Pro Bowl quarterback Kirk Cousins, the perfect counterpart for Mendoza, and first-year head coach Kirk Cousins has said that Mendoza would sit and learn behind Cousins in a perfect world. So now you have a locker room where the veterans know their franchise just invested the no. 1 overall pick on a rookie quarterback. But the team is also paying a veteran $20 million to start. Head coach Kubiak said, "I expect the guys to go out and do their job. They always talk about our quarterback competition. They're competing against the defense every day. But Kirk and Aiden O'Connell are going to get reps. Fernando is going to get a lot of reps. We've got a long way to go until we start playing football in September." That is a coaching speak way of saying, we have not decided anything yet, and everyone should be anxious about their position. In a locker room that just experienced the worst season in franchise history, that kind of ambiguity can be destabilizing. Players are naturally going to gravitate toward the quarterback they believe gives them the best chance to win right now. And for most veterans, that quarterback is the one who has been in the league for over a decade, not the 21-year-old who has not taken a single NFL snap. Former NFL QB Robert Griffin III shared his thoughts on the Raiders' QB situation, stating that winning 10 games for Las Vegas is a possibility if Mendoza starts from week 1. "I don't think the Raiders winning 10 games is out of the question. But I think they only win 10 games if Fernando Mendoza is the starter day 1, Griffin said. So the split is real. Some believe Mendoza should start immediately. Others believe the franchise cannot afford to rush him. And the players in that locker room are caught right in the middle, forced to navigate the competing loyalties and the fractured power dynamics that a quarterback competition inevitably creates. This is where the idea of a revolt takes root, not in some dramatic table-flipping confrontation, but in the slow, corrosive way a locker room begins to fracture when it's unsure who its leader is supposed to be. What's really happening inside the locker room? So with all of this swirling the relatability questions from Emmanuel Acho, the anonymous coach calling Mendoza a fraud, the quarterback competition with Kirk Cousins, and Mendoza's own admission that he used to be difficult with teammates, is there actually a revolt against Fernando Mendoza inside the Raiders locker room? Let's look at what the people who are actually in that building are saying. After day 2 of rookie minicamp, one thing became increasingly clear. Mendoza is just one of the guys. with a quirky and endearing sense of humor quickly picked up on by his teammates. Yes, despite the lofty accolades that could have him on a different plane. Offensive lineman Trey Zune III, the Raiders' second third-round pick, was asked directly about Mendoza. He said he's just a guy's guy, honestly. He just connects with everybody. He's super friendly, easy to talk to, getting to know everybody. He's a great leader and I'm happy to be working with him. Mendoza's fellow rookie and locker mate, safety Tredan Stukes, explained how Mendoza has found ways to connect with the other rookies. He is a super funny guy. It's been so much fun sitting next to him in the locker room. I've only been there for like 3 days or something like that, but it's been super cool getting to know him. I'm super excited to get to be his teammate. I love the way he attacks his work. And he's a cool guy off the field too. And then there's the Kieron Crawford story, https://sportsnaut.com's NFL Las Vegas Raiders Rookie Minicamp 2026 Fernando Mendoza recap, which might be the most telling of all. Crawford told a story that you couldn't script. After his name was called by the Raiders, his agent immediately called Mendoza, not the head coach, not the GM, the quarterback, just to check in. Once my name was called, I was like, you know what? I'm fixing to be around a lot of good people, Crawford said with a grin. That tells you something about Mendoza's reputation around the league before he ever took an NFL snap. And it tells you something about the kind of guy the Raiders just made the face of the franchise. What about Mendoza's approach to all of this? I haven't proved anything, Mendoza said during his introductory press conference with the Raiders. My college career was very blessed, and it was great, very significant career. However, in the NFL, I'm at the bottom of the totem pole again. I'm really looking forward to proving it every single day to everybody in the building. That is not the language of a player who is going to alienate his locker room. However, coming into a new organization, starting from the bottom of the totem pole, I believe that leadership is earned, not given. And what about Mendoza's football preparation, the thing that ultimately earns a quarterback respect from his teammates? Mendoza showed up to his first Raiders rookie minicamp and immediately started talking about Kirk Cousins' footwork. At his introductory press conference, he was asked how familiar he was with Clint Kubiak's offensive system before being drafted. His answer was not what you typically hear from a 21-year-old coming off the greatest college football season in modern history. He won a Super Bowl last year, so I saw a lot of him, Mendoza said. Seeing Kirk Cousins do it back in Minnesota, seeing Sam Darnold do it last year in Seattle, seeing the application and how it's supposed to be executed, what it's done at a high level, is really beneficial for my development. 2 days into rookie camp, the kid is studying how Sam Darnold's eyes move through progressions and asking himself if he can do it better. He even turned down a White House visit, https://sports.euro.com's articles Fernando Mendoza called White House 054217999.html with his Indiana teammates because he didn't want to miss a single day of football preparation. As a rookie, Mendoza felt skipping practice for a celebration wasn't a good look. As for Emmanuel Acho, the same man who raised the relatability concern, he later went on his show and praised the Raiders for signing Kirk Cousins as Mendoza's mentor. Acho argued that this setup allows the rookie to develop without the immense pressure of starting immediately. It means that Fernando Mendoza is being put in the best situation to have long-term success, Acho stated during a recent episode of Speakeasy. As for the anonymous ACC coach who claimed Mendoza doesn't have NFL traits, 4 other coaches in the same ESPN report contradicted him. https://sportsnaut.com's NFL Las Vegas Raiders Fernando Mendoza anonymous coach criticism. 4 other coaches told the same ESPN reporter Mendoza was either one of the more complete quarterback prospects they'd seen, or someone who comes up big in moments you can't teach. Mendoza has one guy with a chip on his shoulder. If anything, this ACC coach trying to start a fire just proved how little fuel there is. And general manager John Spytek. I think any coach is excited to work with a big, athletic, talented thrower that is extremely smart and a very driven worker. And that's been our experience with Fernando, Spytek said. The truth is this, there is no revolt. There is no fracture. What there is, and what is completely normal for any franchise that just burned itself to the ground and started over, is a rebuilding process that requires trust. And trust takes time. Mendoza seems to understand that better than anyone. He is not walking in demanding respect. He is not pulling rank because of his Heisman Trophy or his draft position. He is showing up early, studying film, learning the names of the practice squad guys, and cracking jokes next to Treydan Stukes' locker. The Raiders have spent years looking for a quarterback who treats the position like a craft. Derek Carr became a casualty of dysfunction. Jimmy Garoppolo was a stopgap. Aiden O'Connell was a hope and a prayer. Not one of them walked in the door feeling genuinely hungry to prove something from day one. Mendoza does. Las Vegas is 7-27 over the past 2 seasons. Raiders fans hope Mendoza proves to be the franchise quarterback who can lead them to their first playoff win since January 2003. Whether Fernando Mendoza fulfills that hope remains to be seen, but the idea that his own teammates are revolting against him, that narrative does not hold up against a single piece of evidence from inside the building. The outside noise from anonymous coaches, from TV talking heads, from social media algorithms designed to generate outrage is loud. But inside that locker room in Henderson, Nevada, by every account from every person who has actually been in the room, Fernando Mendoza is doing exactly what a franchise quarterback is supposed to do. He is earning it. References: Raiders.com. Accolades aside, Fernando Mendoza is still just one of the guys. https://www.raiders.com snark meal no snark s esto store just one of the guys. Rookie minicamp 2026 si.com. How the Raiders landed on their franchise QB edge. https://www.set.com snark NFL. How Raiders landed on franchise QB Fernando Mendoza 2026 NFL draft. Sportsnaut Las Vegas Raiders QB Fernando Mendoza faces anonymous coach criticism. https://sportsnaut.com NFL Las Vegas Raiders Fernando Mendoza anonymous coach criticism. Pro Football Network, ex-NFL LB raises one red flag about Fernando Mendoza. https://www.profootballnetwork.com. Fernando Mendoza, red flag Raiders. Fox Sports Raiders QB Fernando Mendoza. I was an a-hole sometimes at Indiana. https://www.foxsports.com. Stories NFL Writers QB Fernando Mendoza, Indiana. Fox News Raiders Fernando Mendoza faces criticism from college football coach. https://www.foxnews.com. Sports Raiders Fernando Mendoza faces criticism. College football coach NFL readiness. ESPN Kirk Cousins, Raiders need to play best QB. Even if not me. https://www.spnbs.com zemgond MFL story slurs ID slocks 48432916. Kirk Cousins, Raiders need play best QB, even not me. Yahoo Sports. Fernando Mendoza called out the White House visit question. https://sportsjokerjuo.com/articles. Fernando Mendoza called White House ver 542179999 dex HTML gonk. New report details depth of Raiders dysfunction amid lost 2025 season. https://www.www.www.com zemfl. New report details Raiders dysfunction lost 2025 season. ESPN Inside Raiders lost 2025 season. https://www.spn.com zemfl story /ID 437517128 Las Vegas Raiders Duck 2025 clips. Mark Davis, Tom Brady, Pete Carroll, Gano Smith dysfunction. Yardbarker Fernando Mendoza is setting the tone. https://www.yardbarker Fernando Mendoza's first Raiders minicamp presser was a masterclass. https://www.yardbarker.com's NFL articles. Fernando Mendoza's first Raiders minicamp presser was a masterclass. The NFL should story /11646W4380272 yardbarker.com's NFL articles. Fernando Mendoza's first Raiders minicamp presser was a masterclass. The NFL showed story /1646W438085514. Newsweek Raiders Hall of Famer warns Fernando Mendoza against one thing. https://www.newsweek.com sports NFL Raiders Hall of Famer warns Fernando Mendoza against one thing. 11926376. Heavy.com Clint Kubiak drops true expectations on Raiders QB battle. https://heavy.com's March Sports NFL Las Vegas Raiders Clint Kubiak true expectations QB battle. Heavy.com Mark Davis breaks silence on Fernando Mendoza edition. https://heavy.com Sports NFL Las Vegas Raiders Mark Davis Fernando Mendoza offseason. SII.com notable Mendoza traits already on display at Raiders camp. Gridiron heroics. Emmanuel Acho defends Fernando Mendoza. Credits Kirk Cousins. https://gridironheroics.com. Kirk Cousins mentor Fernando Mendoza. Just blog baby. College coaches are coming out of the woodwork on Raiders Fernando Mendoza. https://justblogbaby.com/college coaches coming out of the woodwork on Raiders Fernando Mendoza. The big lead. Raiders Fernando Mendoza insists he was an a-hole sometimes there. https://www.thebiglead.com. Raiders Fernando Mendoza insists he was an a-hole sometimes des. Team leader roundtable.io. Some college coaches praising. Others criticizing Raiders QB Fernando Mendoza. https://roundtable.io. Sparks parts variable NFL writers close players close plex coaches praising others criticizing Riders. Close QB Fernando Mendoza. Raiders beat Raiders vet makes strong remarks on what went wrong in 2025.